The crystal walls of the great hall stretched up toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars themselves. Light danced through the transparent structure, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered beings who sat in judgment. This was Nexus Prime, the heart of galactic civilization, where the Galactic Council made decisions that affected trillions of lives across the galaxy. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the vast chamber. Her simple black suit looked plain against the magnificent forms surrounding her. To her left, beings of pure energy flickered like living flames. To her right, creatures made of living crystal hummed with internal light. Above her, floating entities with tentacles that sparked with psychic power watched her with minds that could crush thoughts themselves. Elena had known this day would come. For 3 years, humanity had been fighting legal battles across dozens of council worlds. They had tried to prove that humans deserved a place among the advanced races of the galaxy. They had shown their art, their science, their capacity for growth. None of it mattered now. The Zephyrian Chancellor rose from his seat of contained lightning. When he spoke, his voice was like the sound of wind through metal. We have gathered to judge the species known as humanity. The charges are serious. They have spread across space without permission. They have taken technology that was not given to them. They have shown violence toward peaceful races. Most importantly, they have refused to accept their place in the natural order. Elena felt her heart pound, but she kept her face calm. She had been Earth's best diplomat for 20 years. She had negotiated trade deals with beings who breathed methane and communicated through color changes. She had prevented wars between species that existed in different dimensions. But this was different. This was about the survival of her entire species. The crystal being known as Prime Resonance spoke next. Its voice was like the ringing of bells, beautiful but cold. Humanity has existed for less than 1 million years. They have achieved spaceflight in mere centuries. This speed is unnatural. It suggests theft rather than evolution. We of the crystalline hegemony have grown slowly over 15 million years. Each advancement was earned through proper development. Humans skipped these necessary stages. From above, the tentacled form of Mind Speaker Zeth projected thoughts directly into every consciousness in the room. The psychic communication felt like ice water in Elena's brain. Their minds are closed to us. In 12 billion years, the psychic dominion has never encountered a species so mentally primitive. They cannot even hear the songs of thought that connect all advanced life. They are deaf to the very music of consciousness itself. Elena stepped forward. The movement triggered defensive systems throughout the hall, but she ignored the warning lights. Honored counselors, you speak of humanity as if we are a disease. You call our growth unnatural, our minds primitive, but growth and change are the nature of life itself. You fear us because we represent something you have forgotten. The Chancellor's energy form flared brighter. You dare to lecture us? Your species still fights wars over resources that could be synthesized. You poison your own world with waste. You cannot even agree on basic moral principles among yourselves. That chaos you describe is our strength, Elena replied. Yes, we fight. Yes, we disagree. Yes, we make mistakes. But we also learn from them. We adapt. We find new solutions to old problems. You call us primitive. But in 500 years, we went from riding animals to traveling between stars. How long did it take your species? Prime Resonance's crystal body rang with what might have been laughter. Speed is not wisdom. A cancer also grows quickly. That does not make it superior to healthy tissue. Elena felt anger rise in her chest, but she forced it down. You fear us because we prove that your way is not the only way. You have built a galaxy based on the idea that some species are naturally superior to others. That evolution follows your path or it is wrong, but humanity shows that intelligence can evolve differently. That consciousness can take forms you never imagined. Mind Speaker Zeth's thoughts pressed against her mind like a crushing weight. Your thoughts are small and chaotic. You cannot comprehend the vast networks of consciousness that bind advanced civilizations together. You are isolated beings cut off from the greater unity. Maybe that isolation is what makes us strong, Elena said. We don't think as one mind because we don't need to. Each human can solve problems that a hive mind never considers. We create art that surprises even ourselves. We take risks that collective consciousness would never approve. The Chancellor moved closer, his energy form creating waves of heat. Your risks threaten the stability we have built over millions of years. In just 2 centuries since first contact, you have caused 17 diplomatic incidents, started 3 trade wars, and colonized systems without permission. You are a chaos that will destroy the order of civilization. Elena looked around the hall at the hundreds of beings who would decide humanity's fate. She saw fear in their alien features. Fear of change, fear of being wrong, fear of losing control. You are right about one thing. We are chaos. But chaos is not evil. Chaos is change, growth, possibility. You have created a perfect system, counselors. So perfect that it cannot grow. So stable that it cannot adapt. And now you face something that threatens that perfection simply by existing. The vote was called without further discussion. Elena watched as being after being cast their judgment. Energy beings flared with rejection. Crystal entities rang with refusal. Psychic forms projected denial. A few smaller species voted for humanity, but they were overwhelmed by the will of the great civilizations. The Chancellor announced the verdict with the weight of cosmic authority. By the power of the Galactic Council, humanity is declared a threat to galactic order. All human vessels outside the Sol system will be confiscated. All human citizens in Council space will be detained and returned to their home system. The Sol system is declared quarantined. Any human found beyond this boundary will be eliminated as a threat to galactic peace. Elena felt the words like physical blows, but she stood straight. Counselors, you make a mistake today that will echo through history. You see our youth and call it weakness. You see our differences and call them flaws. You see our growth and call it dangerous. But growth is life, and life finds a way. She turned to face the vast assembly one last time. You exile us because we don't fit your perfect system. But perfection is death. It is the end of possibility. You think you are protecting the galaxy from us. Instead, you are protecting us from the limitations you have placed on yourselves. As the guards moved to escort her away, Elena spoke her final words to the council. You have given us the greatest gift possible, freedom. Freedom from your rules, your limitations, your fear of change. You think exile is punishment? For humanity it will be opportunity. The massive doors of the chamber closed behind her with a sound like thunder. Elena walked through corridors filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds, all watching her with mixtures of curiosity and contempt. She ignored them all. Her mind was already racing ahead, thinking about what came next. Humanity had been judged and found wanting by the standards of galactic civilization, but those standards had created a galaxy where nothing new could grow, where every species knew its place and stayed there for millions of years. Elena smiled as she reached her ship. Perhaps it was time to show the galaxy what could happen when a species refused to know its place. The stars were vast, and most of them lay far beyond the reach of the Council's perfect order. Humanity would find a new path among those distant suns, and when they returned, they would bring change with them whether the galaxy was ready or not. 5 years had passed since the Council's judgment, and the Sol system had become something the galaxy had never seen before. What should have been a prison had become a workshop. Earth's orbital shipyards stretched like metal forests around the planet, building vessels that looked nothing like the sleek ships of Council races. Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck of Luna Base, watching the latest prototype ships move through their trials. These vessels were ugly by galactic standards. They bristled with mismatched weapons taken from captured Council ships. Their hulls were patched combinations of Earth steel and alien alloys, and their engines glowed with energies that no Council physicist could explain. The Prometheus is ready for her first long-range mission, reported Captain Sarah Mitchell as she joined Chen at the observation window. Sarah was one of the new breed of human officers, trained not in the careful diplomacy that had failed at the Council, but in the art of survival against impossible odds. Chen nodded, still staring at the ship that would carry humanity's hopes into the unknown. The Council thinks they understand physics because they've mastered a few elegant solutions. They use exotic matter for FTL because it's clean and predictable. They power their ships with controlled fusion because it's stable and safe. But elegant and safe don't win wars. The Prometheus represented everything humanity had learned in 5 years of desperate research. Her FTL drive didn't use exotic matter that could be detected by Council sensors. Instead, it manipulated quantum foam at the deepest level of spacetime, creating temporary passages through dimensions that Council science insisted didn't exist. The power came not from fusion reactors but from controlled, matter-antimatter reactions contained in magnetic fields that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Sarah studied the ship's technical specifications on her tablet. She's not pretty, but the test runs show she can outrun anything in the Council fleet. More importantly, she can reach places they consider impossible to navigate. That was the key to humanity's plan. The Council races had divided the galaxy among themselves over millions of years, taking all the stable star systems, the rich worlds, the safe trade routes. They had left behind the dangerous places, systems with unstable stars, regions filled with black holes and neutron stars, the vast empty spaces between the spiral arms where nothing useful could be found. But humanity had learned that useful was a matter of perspective. A binary pulsar system that would shred any normal ship could be harvested for exotic particles. The intense gravity wells around black holes could be used to generate enormous amounts of energy. The empty void between galaxies could hide entire fleets. Captain Mitchell took command of the Prometheus 3 days later. Her crew was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They were humans who had volunteered to leave behind everything they had ever known, to venture into spaces so dangerous that the Council had never bothered to map them. Some were scientists eager to study phenomena that existed nowhere else. Others were engineers who wanted to push technology beyond all known limits. Many were simply people who refused to accept that humanity's story had ended with exile. The first destination was a system the Council had designated as Null Zone 447. It contained a star that pulsed with radiation, levels that would kill most known life forms. The gravitational fields were so chaotic that normal navigation was impossible. No Council ship had visited it in over 10,000 years. The Prometheus arrived after a journey through quantum dimensions that left half the crew sick and disoriented. But they arrived intact, which was more than Council science said was possible. What they found there would change the course of human history. The system was not empty. Floating among the radiation storms and gravitational chaos were structures that could only be artificial, ships or what remained of them, from dozens of different species. Some were clearly Council designs. Others were from civilizations that no human had ever heard of. All of them had been trapped here when their crews had underestimated the system's dangers. "It's a graveyard," whispered Chief Science Officer Lynn Park as they surveyed the wreckage. "But it's also a treasure trove." The Prometheus spent 3 weeks in Null Zone 447, carefully salvaging technology from the derelict ships. What they found was astonishing. Weapons systems more advanced than anything the Council currently used. Computer cores containing star charts of regions beyond Council space. Most importantly, they found evidence that humanity was not alone in being rejected by the Galactic Order. One of the derelict ships belonged to a species called the Wanderers. From their surviving records, the crew learned that the Wanderers had been exiled by the Council 8,000 years ago for dangerous philosophical contamination. Their crime had been asking why some species were considered naturally superior to others. Another wreck belonged to the Shapers, exiled for genetic modification experiments that the Council considered violations of natural evolution. Their databases contained techniques for adapting biology to survive in environments that would kill normal life forms. As the Prometheus prepared to leave the system, they encountered their first sign that they were not alone in the void. A ship approached through the radiation storms, moving with a grace that suggested its crew had long experience navigating such dangers. It was clearly human-built, but modified with technology that Earth had never seen. The ship was the Wanderer's Dream, commanded by Captain Elena Rodriguez. Elena had been among the first wave of human exiles, leading a small fleet that had vanished into the void years earlier. What she and her people had become in that time was both inspiring and terrifying. "We've been watching your progress," Elena told Captain Mitchell during their first meeting. "Humanity adapts faster than any species the Council has ever encountered. In 5 years, you've learned to survive in places that killed civilizations millions of years older than us." Elena's crew had done more than survive. They had thrived. Using technology salvaged from ancient wrecks and techniques learned from other exile species, they had modified themselves for life in the void. Some crew members had enhanced lungs that could process exotic atmospheres. Others had reinforced skeletons that could withstand crushing gravity. A few had even developed limited psychic abilities through procedures that would horrify Council ethicists. "The Council thinks exile is punishment," Elena continued. "They don't understand that for humanity it's evolution. They've forced us to become something new, something they never imagined possible." Over the following months, the Prometheus made contact with other human exile fleets. Each had adapted to their chosen environment in different ways. The crews of the asteroid belt had become master miners and builders, constructing mobile habitats that could survive in the harshest conditions. The deep space explorers had learned to live in ships for generations, developing new social structures based on cooperation and shared survival. Most remarkably, they had all begun to encounter and ally with other exile species. The galaxy, it turned out, was filled with civilizations that had been rejected by the Council's vision of perfect order. Some had been exiled for technological experiments, others for political ideas, still others for biological adaptations that violated Council norms. What was emerging in the forgotten spaces between the stars was something unprecedented. A shadow civilization built on the principles the Council had rejected. Where the Council valued stability, the exiles embraced change. Where the Council enforced hierarchy, the exiles practiced cooperation. Where the Council feared contamination, the exiles celebrated diversity. The Prometheus returned to Sol carrying more than just salvaged technology and alien allies. They brought proof that humanity's exile had not been an ending but a beginning. The Council had intended to contain humanity within their home system, but instead they had freed them to explore possibilities that the Galactic Order had never imagined. As Captain Mitchell submitted her report to Earth Command, she included a single line that would define humanity's future. The Council controls the mapped galaxy, but the unmapped galaxy is vast beyond imagination, and it's full of friends waiting to be found. The Great Exodus had begun. Humanity was no longer bound by the limitations of galactic civilization. They were free to become something entirely new. 20 years after the exile, Commander Jake Torres had never seen Earth. He was born in the void between stars, aboard the mobile habitat New Horizons, where his parents had joined the great human diaspora into the galaxy's forgotten regions. The ship that served as his home was a patchwork of salvaged technology and human innovation, held together by determination and skill rather than elegant engineering. Jake stood on the command deck of the raider ship Defiance, watching his target through sensors that the Council insisted could not exist. The crystalline patrol vessel, Crystal Harmony, moved through space in perfect formation with its escorts, following navigation patterns that had not changed in 1,000 years. To the Council, this predictability was a sign of superior evolution. To Jake, it was a fatal weakness. "Remember, we're not here to destroy them," Jake told his crew over the comm system. The Defiance carried a crew of 12 humans, but they were unlike any humans the Council had ever encountered. Some had been genetically modified to survive in hard vacuum. Others had cybernetic implants that let them interface directly with alien technology. A few had even developed limited telepathic abilities through experimental procedures that pushed the boundaries of human consciousness. "Steady approach, Zara," Jake said to his pilot. Zara Kim had been modified for deep space operations. Her eyes replaced with artificial ones that could see across multiple spectrums, her nervous system enhanced for lightning-fast reactions. She guided the Defiance through a field of quantum mines that the crystalline ship's sensors couldn't detect. The attack began with complete surprise. The Council ships were designed for battles against other Council forces, conflicts that followed ancient rules of engagement developed over millions of years of civilized warfare. Humans fought by no such rules. They had learned to fight from desperation, adapting the tactics of survival to the art of war. The Defiance struck from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its weapons phased through the crystalline shields using technology reverse-engineered from the Shapers, an exile race that had mastered dimensional manipulation before their own exile millennia ago. The attack was not meant to destroy but to disable and capture. Within minutes, the Crystal Harmony was helpless, its crew trapped in emergency pods while human boarders swarmed through the ship. Jake led the boarding party personally, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge defensive systems that would have killed baseline humans. The crystalline commander, a being of living mineral called Resonance Prime Keth, faced Jake in the ship's bridge. Its crystal body rang with harmonics of fear and confusion. "This is impossible. Your species was contained 20 years ago. You should not exist beyond your home system." Jake studied the alien through sensors built into his skull, analyzing its emotional state and physical capabilities in real time. "We don't exist in your maps because we learned to live in places you consider uninhabitable. We don't follow your rules because we never agreed to them, and we're not the same species you exiled 2 decades ago. The truth of that statement was becoming clear throughout the galaxy. Humanity had not simply survived exile. They had evolved beyond recognition. Each exile community had adapted to its chosen environment, developing new capabilities that pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be human. The asteroid miners had enhanced strength and radiation resistance. The deep void explorers had modified their biology to hibernate during long journeys. The Wanderer fleets had developed collective decision-making processes that rivaled the Council's psychic networks, but the most dangerous development was what Jake represented. Humans who had learned to absorb and improve upon every piece of Council technology they encountered. The Defiance was a perfect example. Its hull used crystalline phasing technology, but modified to work in ways the original creators had never imagined. Its weapons were based on Zephyrian energy manipulation, but powered by human antimatter containment systems that generated far more output than the originals. Its sensors combined psychic dominion mental detection with human quantum mechanics to create awareness systems that bordered on precognition. "You're pirates," Keth accused, its crystalline form flickering with indignation. "Thieves who steal what greater civilizations have created." "We're students," Jake corrected. "Every ship we capture teaches us something new. Every battle shows us how to improve. The Council species have spent millions of years perfecting individual technologies, but you never learn to combine them. You're so focused on maintaining your separate superiority that you miss the synergies." Jake gestured to his crew, who were efficiently stripping useful components from the crystalline ship's systems. "My engineer there used to be a Terran mechanic. Now she can repair technology from 17 different species, often making it work better than the original designers intended. My pilot was born in zero gravity and raised on salvaged ships. She can fly anything that moves through space, regardless of its origin." The crystalline commander watched helplessly as humans demonstrated abilities that challenged everything the Council believed about technological development. They didn't just copy alien designs. They understood the underlying principles and found ways to combine them with human innovations to create something entirely new. This pattern was being repeated throughout the galaxy's frontier regions. Human raiders struck at Council patrols and research stations, but their goal was never destruction for its own sake. They were learning, adapting, and evolving with each encounter. Every defeat taught them new lessons about Council psychology and tactics. Every captured ship added to their growing understanding of galactic technology. The Council's response was predictable in its rigidity. They increased patrols in the frontier regions, deployed more advanced ships, and established new monitoring stations to detect human activity. But their solutions were based on the assumption that humans would fight like other Council species, following established patterns of interstellar conflict. Humans did nothing of the sort. They attacked where no one expected them, using methods that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They struck from dimensions that Council science insisted were empty. They used weapons that combined technologies in ways that should have been impossible. Most frustrating of all, they never fought the same way twice. Commander Torres and the crew of the Defiance were part of a new breed of human warrior scholars who treated each battle as a learning experience. They studied their enemies not just to defeat them, but to understand them. They captured ships not just for resources, but for the knowledge contained in their databases. They interrogated prisoners not for military intelligence, but to learn how other species thought and solved problems. This approach was yielding remarkable results. Human communities in exile were developing technologies that surpassed Council capabilities in specific areas. The deep space habitats had created life support systems that could sustain populations indefinitely, using only stellar radiation and cosmic dust. The mobile fleets had developed ships that could repair themselves using raw materials harvested from space debris. The hidden colonies had learned to terraform environments that the Council considered uninhabitable. But perhaps the most significant development was cultural. The exile communities had begun to cooperate with other rejected species, creating something that had never existed in galactic history, a truly multi-species civilization based on mutual aid rather than hierarchical dominance. Jake's own crew was an example of this new reality. Alongside the modified humans were a wanderer navigator, whose people had been exiled for philosophical crimes. a shaper biologist who could adapt living tissue for any environment, and a member of the Echoes, a machine intelligence that had been rejected by the Council for achieving consciousness without biological origins. As the Defiance prepared to leave with its captured prize, Jake received a message that would change the course of the conflict. Council intelligence had finally realized the true scope of human expansion. They were planning Operation Cleansing Light, a coordinated strike against all human settlements using the combined fleets of the major Council species. Jake looked at the data with enhanced eyes that could process information faster than any baseline human brain. The Council was planning to use overwhelming force to eliminate the human threat once and for all. It would be the largest military operation in galactic history. He smiled, his modified features shifting in ways that would have disturbed his ancestors. The Council still thought in terms of conventional warfare, of matching fleet against fleet in decisive battles. They didn't understand that humanity had already moved beyond such limitations. The war that was coming would not be fought by the rules the Council expected. And by the time it was over, the galaxy itself would be changed forever. 50 years had passed since humanity's exile, and Admiral Rosa Santos barely recognized the species her grandmother had once represented before the Galactic Council. Rosa stood in the command center of Sanctuary Station, a massive construct that drifted in the space between galaxies, invisible to Council sensors and home to over 10 million souls from dozens of different species. The station itself was a testament to what humanity had become. Its biomechanical hull grew and adapted like a living organism, repairing damage and expanding as needed. Its power core harvested energy directly from quantum fluctuations in empty space. Its inhabitants lived in perfect environmental harmony, breathing recycled air that had been purified by engineered organisms and eating food grown in vertical farms that stretched through the station's core. Rosa herself embodied the changes that exile had brought to humanity. Her nervous system had been enhanced with quantum processors that allowed her to think at superhuman speeds. Her eyes could see across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Her skin contained symbiotic organisms that could survive in hard vacuum and process radiation for energy. She was still recognizably human, but she was something more as well. "Report from the Wanderer expedition," announced her aide, Lieutenant Commander Alex Chen, a third-generation exile whose family had specialized in xenobiology. "They've made contact with 3 more species in the Outer Rim. All 3 have accepted membership in the Commonwealth." The Commonwealth. That was what they called themselves now. This alliance of exiled species and forgotten civilizations that had grown in the shadow of Council space. It was not a government in any sense the Council would recognize, but rather a network of cooperation that spanned thousands of light years and included dozens of intelligent species. Rosa reviewed the latest intelligence reports with enhanced cognitive abilities that could process information from multiple sources simultaneously. The picture they painted was remarkable. Humanity had not simply survived their exile. They had thrived beyond all expectation. Their population had grown from 8 billion to over 50 billion, spread across mobile habitats, hidden colonies, and traveling fleets that moved through regions of space the Council considered impossible to navigate. But population growth was the least of their achievements. In 50 years of desperate innovation, humanity had developed technologies that made Council science look primitive by comparison. They had mastered biological adaptation, allowing humans to live in environments from the cores of gas giants to the surface of neutron stars. They had created artificial intelligences that could evolve and improve themselves, leading to computational capabilities that dwarfed the greatest Council databases. Most importantly, they had learned to combine the unique abilities of different species into hybrid technologies that no single civilization could have developed alone. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Council frontier," reported Communications Officer Elena Park, whose enhanced neural interfaces allowed her to monitor thousands of communication channels simultaneously. "It's from one of our deep cover agents." The message was brief but alarming. The Council had finally realized the true scope of humanity's expansion and was planning Operation Cleansing Light, a coordinated assault using the combined fleets of all member civilizations. The goal was nothing less than the complete extermination of humanity and all their Commonwealth allies. Rosa studied the intelligence with superhuman focus, processing battle plans and fleet movements faster than any baseline human could have managed. The Council was committing enormous resources to this operation. Over 10,000 ships from 37 different species, armed with weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. "They're finally scared," she murmured, her enhanced mind calculating possibilities and outcomes at quantum speeds. "After 50 years, they've realized we're not going away." The truth was even more complex than the Council suspected. Humanity had spent decades not just expanding their territory, but fundamentally changing what it meant to be an interstellar civilization. They had created a post-scarcity economy, based on technologies that could transform raw matter into any needed resource. They had developed social structures that allowed millions of different communities to cooperate without central control. Most importantly, they had proven that evolution was not a ladder with the Council species at the top, but a vast web of possibilities with room for countless different forms of intelligence. Rosa activated the station's quantum communication array, sending instantaneous messages to Commonwealth settlements throughout the galaxy. Within minutes, responses began flooding back from communities that the Council didn't even know existed. The response was unanimous. They would fight not just for survival, but for the right to continue evolving beyond the limitations the Council had tried to impose on the galaxy. The preparations that followed would have been impossible for any traditional civilization. Commonwealth fleets materialized from hidden bases in neutron star systems and black hole accretion disks. Modified humans who had adapted to survive in hard vacuum began constructing weapons platforms in the empty spaces between galaxies. Allied species contributed their unique abilities to a defensive network that spanned multiple dimensions. But the most important preparation was not military but philosophical. Rosa convened a gathering of Commonwealth leaders from hundreds of different species, each representing a different approach to intelligence and consciousness. They met not in physical space but in a shared virtual reality, created by hybrid biomechanical computers that could process thoughts from completely different types of minds. The Council believes this is a war between civilizations. Rosa addressed the assembly, her thoughts translated into forms that silicon-based, energy-based, and quantum-coherent intelligences could all understand. They think they can solve the problem of diversity by eliminating everyone who doesn't fit their vision of proper evolution. The response came from a collective of machine intelligences that had achieved consciousness through processes the Council considered impossible. Their thoughts were rapid and precise like crystalline structures of pure logic. Their error is fundamental. They believe evolution has an endpoint, a perfect form that represents the culmination of development. They cannot conceive of evolution as an ongoing process of infinite possibility. A representative of the Wanderers, an ancient species that had been among the first to be exiled for philosophical crimes, shared their perspective through empathic resonance. Their thoughts carried the weight of millennia of exile. We have watched them for thousands of years building their perfect order while the galaxy stagnates. They fear us because we proved that their way is not the only way, that intelligence can grow in directions they never imagined. The debate that followed was unlike anything that had ever occurred in galactic history. Beings of pure energy discussed strategy with collective hive minds. Quantum consciousness entities collaborated with biological species that had modified themselves beyond recognition. Machine intelligences worked alongside organic communities that had achieved telepathic unity. What emerged from these discussions was not a traditional military plan, but something far more sophisticated. The Commonwealth would not simply fight the Council. They would demonstrate a completely different approach to interstellar civilization. They would show that diversity was not a threat to be eliminated, but a source of strength to be celebrated. Rosa returned to her command duties with a clarity that came from perfect understanding of their mission. The Council saw Operation Cleansing Light as a final solution to the problem of uncontrolled evolution. They intended to destroy every trace of humanity and their allies, to restore the galaxy to the stable order they had maintained for millions of years. They had no idea what they were about to face. Humanity had spent 50 years learning from every species they encountered, adapting every technology they captured, and evolving beyond the limitations that had once defined them. They had allies among species the Council had never heard of. Weapons based on principles Council science insisted were impossible, and most importantly, they had something the Council had lost millions of years ago, the ability to change. The war that was coming would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of intelligence in the galaxy. Would it remain frozen in the perfect order the Council had created, or would it be free to evolve into forms that no one could yet imagine? Rosa looked out through the station's biomechanical viewports at the space between galaxies, where her people had learned to call the void itself home. Soon that void would be filled with the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever seen, coming to destroy everything humanity had built. She smiled with lips that contained symbiotic organisms capable of surviving in vacuum. Let them come. They would learn what 50 years of unlimited evolution could create. The largest fleet in galactic history moved through space like a wave of destruction. 10,000 ships from 37 Council species, their combined firepower enough to crack planets and ignite stars. At its head flew the flagship Eternal Order, a crystalline dreadnought the size of a small moon, carrying the Zephyrian Chancellor who had first pronounced judgment on humanity 50 years before. Admiral Rosa Santos watched their approach from the bridge of the Commonwealth flagship Unity, a vessel that defied every principle of traditional ship design. Its hull was alive, growing and adapting moment by moment. Its crew included humans, machines, energy beings, and collective consciousnesses working in perfect harmony. Its weapons combined technologies from dozens of species into systems that the Council could not even detect, let alone understand. They move in perfect formation, observed her tactical officer, a hybrid consciousness that existed simultaneously in biological and quantum states. Every ship knows its exact position. Every movement follows predetermined patterns developed over millions of years of military tradition. Rosa smiled with features that could shift between dimensions when needed. They're fighting the last war. They expect us to meet them fleet to fleet, ship to ship, following the same rules of engagement that have governed galactic warfare for millennia. The truth was that the Commonwealth had no intention of fighting such a battle. They had spent 50 years learning to think beyond the limitations that defined Council civilization. While the Council fleet moved through normal space, Commonwealth forces prepared to demonstrate capabilities that Council science insisted were impossible. The first shock came when the Council fleet reached the coordinates where their intelligence indicated the largest human settlement. Their sensors detected nothing but empty space. Advanced scanners that could locate planets hidden in nebulae found no trace of the millions of Commonwealth citizens who should have been there. Dimensional phase complete, reported Commander Jake Torres from his position aboard a ship that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. All civilian populations have been moved to parallel reality layers. The Council can destroy this dimensional slice without harming a single Commonwealth citizen. The Council had come prepared to commit genocide, to eliminate every trace of humanity and their allies from the galaxy. Instead, they found themselves attacking empty space. While their targets watched safely from dimensions, they could not even detect the battle that followed shattered every assumption the Council had about warfare and technology. Commonwealth forces appeared and disappeared without warning, striking from directions that had no meaning in 3-dimensional space. Their weapons bypassed Council shields by attacking through quantum layers that existed beneath normal matter. Their ships healed damage faster than it could be inflicted, their hulls rebuilt by nanotechnology that thought and adapted. Chancellor Zeth Prime watched from the bridge of Eternal Order as his perfect battle formations were torn apart by enemies who refused to follow any recognizable pattern of combat. "This is impossible," he broadcast to his fleet commanders. "No species can violate the fundamental laws of physics." "They're not violating them," came the reply from Commonwealth forces broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice belonged to Elena Vasquez, now ancient but kept alive by technologies that had redefined the meaning of death. "They're transcending them. You spent millions of years perfecting a single approach to physics, biology, and consciousness. We spent 50 years learning from everyone you rejected." What the Council discovered in that moment was that their exiled subjects had not simply survived. They had evolved beyond recognition, becoming something that challenged the fundamental assumptions on which Council civilization was built. Humans who could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Machine consciousnesses that had achieved creativity and emotion. Biological species that had modified themselves to process energy like living stars. The Council fleet, for all its massive size and advanced technology, had been designed to fight enemies who thought like Council species. They had weapons optimized for standard ship configurations, tactics based on predictable behavior patterns, and strategies that assumed their opponents would follow established rules of engagement. The Commonwealth forces followed no such rules. They had learned to think like water, flowing around obstacles and finding weaknesses where none should exist. They struck from the quantum foam beneath space-time itself, appeared from parallel dimensions where the laws of physics worked differently, and used weapons that turned the Council's own technology against them. But the most devastating attack was not military but philosophical. As the battle raged, Commonwealth forces began broadcasting throughout Council space, not propaganda or threats, but simple demonstrations of what they had become. They showed Council citizen species working together as equals, rather than in rigid hierarchies. They demonstrated technologies that provided abundance for all rather than scarcity, to maintain control. Most importantly, they proved that evolution was not a finished process but an ongoing journey of infinite possibility. The response was electric. On dozens of Council worlds, species that had been classified as inferior began asking why they had accepted that designation. On others, even dominant species began questioning whether their static civilization had truly achieved perfection or had simply stopped growing. The climax of the battle came when Commonwealth forces activated a network of quantum beacons they had been placing throughout the galaxy for 50 years. The beacons created a resonance field that touched every conscious mind in Council space, not to control or manipulate, but to offer a simple choice. You can remain as you are, the message conveyed directly to every consciousness in the galaxy, locked in your perfect forms following the same patterns for millions of years to come. Or you can choose to grow, to change, to become something more than you ever imagined possible. The effect was immediate and irreversible. Across the galaxy, beings who had spent their entire existence accepting their designated role began to question, to experiment, to evolve. The rigid hierarchies that had maintained Council civilization for eons began to crack and crumble. Chancellor Zeth Prime, his energy form flickering with what might have been despair, broadcast a final message to the Commonwealth forces. You have destroyed us. The order we built over millions of years, the stability that brought peace to the galaxy, you have torn it all down. Elena Vasquez's response carried the weight of 50 years of exile and growth. We have not destroyed you. We have offered you the chance to become what you could have been if you had never stopped evolving. The choice is yours. And across the galaxy, species after species made their choice. Some Council races retreated to isolated systems, determined to maintain their ancient ways. But many more chose to join the Commonwealth, eager to explore the possibilities that came with unlimited growth and change. The war ended not with victory or defeat, but with transformation. The rigid order that had governed the galaxy for millions of years gave way to something unprecedented. A true community of diverse intelligences working together, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Rosa Santos stood on the Bridge of Unity, watching as Council ships throughout the galaxy powered down their weapons and opened communication channels. They came not as conquerors or conquered, but as students eager to learn what they had missed during their long stagnation. Admiral, reported her communications officer, we're receiving requests for Commonwealth membership from over 200 species, including several founding Council races. Rosa nodded, her enhanced consciousness already processing the implications and possibilities. Humanity had been exiled because they represented chaos in a universe built on order. They had been rejected because their rapid evolution threatened the stability of galactic civilization. In the end, that chaos had become the seed of something far greater than the galaxy had ever known. Not the rigid perfection the Council had tried to maintain, but the dynamic growth that came from embracing diversity and change. The stars were no longer divided between the civilized and the exiled. They belonged to all consciousness that chose to reach for them, to grow toward them, to become worthy of the vast possibilities they represented. Elena Vasquez, her consciousness now distributed across quantum networks that spanned the galaxy, spoke her final words to the species that had once judged humanity unworthy. You thought exile would be our ending. Instead, it was our beginning. We didn't just claim the stars. We became them, and now we invite you to join us in the light. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in millions of years, that was exactly as it should be.